Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. You'd think assigned parking would be a simple concept, right? Well, not for one entitled realtor who thought he could hijack someone's spot without consequences. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. He took my parking spot, so I turned his condo tour into a rap concert. For context, I used to live in a condo complex where every unit had an assigned parking spot. They were clearly numbered and part of your ownership. Your spot was your spot, no debate. There were also several visitor spots scattered around the property, free for short-term use. You'd think this would be a pretty easy system to follow, right? Apparently not. One random weekday afternoon, I came home early. The complex was mostly empty. People were still at work, so nearly all the resident parking spots were vacant, except mine. There, right in my assigned spot, was a large, unfamiliar SUV. I was confused at first, maybe even gave the guy the benefit of the doubt. Mistaken visitors do show up now and then, sometimes genuinely unaware of the parking rules. So I parked my car directly behind the SUV, effectively boxing him in, and walked up to the driver's side window to see what was going on. The driver rolled the window down. He looked about mid-40s, wearing a business casual outfit and sporting the smug expression of someone who's never been told no in his life. "How long are you planning to be here?" I asked politely. "About 45 minutes, he replied flatly. I looked around and gestured across the lot. "Would you mind moving to a visitor spot? There are several open just over there." And that's when things escalated. This man, without missing a beat, snapped "No!" in what I can only describe as the shrillest, most nasally voice I've ever heard come out of a grown man. You could have mistaken him for a cartoon character having a tantrum. He then launched into a full-blown monologue, how he was a realtor, how he was showing the condo unit right in front of my space, how the property management told him it was fine to park there, which I knew was absolute BS, and how I was being unreasonable for even asking. You'd think I asked him to donate a kidney the way he was reacting. I stood there for a moment, blinking at him mid-rant, before I decided I didn't have the time or mental energy to deal with this nonsense, so I just cut him off with a quick, "Okay then," turned around and parked in an available visitor spot. But rude people, they get under my skin, especially when they're confidently rude while clearly in the wrong. And I wasn't about to just let this guy walk away thinking he could stomp all over people without consequences. If he was going to inconvenience me in my space, then I figured I'd return the favor creatively. You see, my unit's window directly faces the parking lot. And wouldn't you know it, I have a pretty decent speaker, so I set it up on the windowsill, aimed right at his precious showing, and started blasting some of the loudest, most aggressive rap music I had queued up. Full volume, bass thumping, lyrics sharp enough to slice drywall. I let it roll for about half an hour, not too long, but long enough that if anyone was inside the unit touring it, they probably got a full concert experience. Hopefully it gave the potential buyer pause. Maybe they wondered if our quiet little community wasn't so peaceful after all. Maybe they second-guessed that offer, who knows? I like to think I shaved a few grand off that sale price. To those wondering why I didn't get the guy towed, believe me, I tried in the past for similar offenders. The problem was our HOA hadn't contracted with the towing company for regular patrols or enforcement, and any companies I called directly wouldn't touch vehicles on private multi-unit property without prior authorization. So no, towing wasn't an option. But petty revenge? That was entirely on the table. And in this case, it was bass-boosted, beat-driven justice served at full volume. You should have followed him to where he was showing and started screaming at him about your parking spot in front of the potential buyer. And our second story. She damaged my truck and lied, so I planted car trouble. $3,500 later, my door's fixed. A few years back, I had a neighbor who was the walking definition of arrogance. She lived in the same apartment complex as me and drove a four-wheel drive half-ton Chevy. She was one of those people who spoke to anyone in her trade job like they were beneath her, unless she needed something, of course. One morning, I watched from my front window as she carelessly swung her door open and whack right into the side of my truck. I'd just gotten it painted not too long before, and this left a nice little dent and a scrape. I stepped outside and called her on it. She had the audacity to look me straight in the eye and say, "I didn't touch your truck," like I hadn't just seen it happen. No apology, no acknowledgement, just flat-out denial. There were no security cameras in our lot, and no one else saw it. I filed a police report anyway, hoping maybe something would come of it, but I was basically told, "Sorry, it's a civil matter, it's your word against hers." So I was stuck with a busted door. At the time, I just finished rebuilding a differential for a project truck. During the build, I had a pinion gear go bad teeth, chipped up, useless. It was sitting on my bench in the garage collecting dust when I glanced at it one day and got an idea. A stupid but absolutely perfect idea. That night, I took the old busted pinion gear and slid it carefully under the middle of her truck right around the transmission area. Then I grabbed one of those heavy-duty HVAC zip ties, the kind made for ductwork, and wrapped it snugly around her drive shaft so it'd slap the muffler with every rotation. The next morning, I made sure I was casually outside as she backed out of her space. Right on cue, I heard it. Tink, 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 tink. She hit the brakes. The noise stopped. Then she crept forward. Tink, tink, tink again. She put it in park and got out with that same resting, smug face. But now she looked confused. That's when I wandered over and played dumb. "Everything all right?" She pointed under the truck and picked up the pinion gear. "This just fell out from underneath, and now it's making a weird noise. Do you know what this is?" I looked at it, turned it over in my hands, and said, "Well, it looks like it might be part of the transmission or the differential. Might want to have it towed." She frowned. "You think it's serious?" I shrugged. "Could be. Wouldn't risk driving it." Then she asked me if I knew any good mechanics, and this was the moment where things went from petty to theatrical. I gave her the name of a shop across town with a terrible reputation. They were known for charging for things they didn't fix, especially when they sniffed out someone with no clue and too much money. She had the truck towed that afternoon. It was gone for 2 weeks. When it finally reappeared, I caught her one day and casually asked her what the issue was. "Oh my God, don't even ask," she groaned. "They said the transmission was shot and a bunch of other stuff was going bad too. Ended up costing me $3,500. I just nodded sympathetically while biting the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. That shop had charged her thousands to fix a zip tie I installed and a busted pinion gear I planted. They probably had a field day messing with her, especially if she brought her usual "I'm better than you" attitude. Meanwhile, I took my truck in and got the door repaired for $300 flat. Good as new. She never suspected a thing, and honestly, I never felt bad about it. She'd made it clear from day one that she saw herself as better than anyone who worked with their hands. I'm guessing the guys at that shop were more than happy to serve her a plate of humble pie with a side of bogus repairs. Plot twist, there actually was something seriously wrong with the transmission, and your deception prevented a serious accident, which would have been her demise. You saved her life. And our last story. She wanted legal help covering her lies. I gave her legal hell instead. 2 years ago, I was working as a paralegal at a small but busy personal injury law firm. I commuted every morning through a crowded intersection where 2 left turn lanes fed onto a major boulevard. One morning, I was sitting in the proper turn lane, waiting for the arrow to change, sipping my coffee and thinking about the massive pile of case files waiting for me. That's when she entered my life. A silver BMW in the lane beside me suddenly veered into mine at the last second, nearly sideswiping me as the driver realized, too late, that she'd picked the wrong lane. I had to slam my brakes so hard that my coffee went flying all over my dash. I barely avoided a crash, and the woman didn't even glance my way. Instead, she peeled off, gunning it down the boulevard like she was auditioning for a Fast and Furious sequel. I caught up to her a few moments later, just in time to witness her plow into the rear of a teenager's car as she tried to swerve across 3 lanes of traffic without signaling. It was a hard hit. I pulled over immediately, called the police, and checked on the high school girl in the other car. She was shaken, but okay. Meanwhile, the woman who caused the wreck, who I mentally dubbed Mrs. Jerk, was screaming at everyone, cussing at the teenager, berating bystanders, and generally acting like she was the victim. When the police arrived, I gave them my full witness statement and figured that was the end of my involvement. I was wrong. 6 months later, I inherited a nightmare case from a paralegal we fired. Let's call her Kate. Kate couldn't format a letter to save her life and had a habit of stuffing documents into case files without reading them. I opened the file and was immediately greeted with a familiar name, Mrs. Jerk. Turns out she'd retained our firm to represent her in that accident, the one she caused. She told Kate and my boss, Mr. Lawyer, that she was the innocent victim of an out-of-control teenage driver. I blinked at the file, then pulled up the accident report. There it was, my name listed as a key witness, a witness who had already told the police Mrs. Jerk was absolutely at fault. And Kate hadn't sent the initial notice to the at-fault insurer, so now I was stuck cleaning up a case that was fraudulent and badly mishandled. Cue my revenge. I walked straight into Mr. Lawyer's office and laid the whole thing out, my witness report, the fact that Kate had failed to notify the insurance, and that we were, whether knowingly or not, now representing a woman who had committed fraud by lying to both us and the police. His eyes narrowed as he realized what a liability this case could be. Not only could it destroy our reputation, but it could open the door to insurance fraud charges if we continued. We had to cut her loose, but just firing her wasn't enough. Not for me. Mr. Lawyer agreed. So he called her in. I waited outside the door and listened as the confrontation went down. Mr. Lawyer, ever the professional, calmly told her we'd reviewed the case and discovered some major inconsistencies, namely that she had lied about who was at fault. Her screeching started almost immediately. Threats, profanity, demands. She shrieked that, "You can't fire me, I fire you," and threatened to sue us for malpractice. Mr. Lawyer simply smiled and said, "You're free to seek other counsel. In fact, I know just the person for you." He handed her a card for Mr. A-Hole, a notoriously aggressive, bombastic attorney who delighted in impossible cases and always charged an outrageous upfront retainer. He also had a habit of dragging clients through endless paperwork hell and never calling back. But that wasn't all. Remember how Mrs. Jerk had filed an insurance claim for injuries? I anonymously sent a copy of the police report with my witness statement to the insurance fraud division of the state, along with her signed statement in our intake form where she claimed she was T-boned while obeying traffic laws. Oh, and did I mention she also tried to file for disability payments and had posted TikToks of herself dancing at a friend's wedding 2 weeks after the crash? Yeah, I sent that too. 3 months later, I heard through legal grapevine that Mrs. Jerk was under investigation for insurance fraud and civil liability. Her case was tossed, her insurer dropped her, and she was hit with a fine for submitting false statements in a claim. Mr. A-Hole didn't lift a finger once her check bounced. I didn't even have to get my hands dirty. All I had to do was let the truth and the paperwork do its job. And watching that smug, shrieking menace implode under the weight of her own lies, that was worth every cup of spilled coffee. This woman went from almost causing a wreck and ruining your coffee to screaming, "You can't fire me, I fire you," in a law office while being handed the legal equivalent of a cursed monkey's paw in the form of Mr. A-Hole's business card. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.